The morning sun rose over New York City like any other day. Office workers hurried to their jobs, children went to school, and the world turned as it always had. Nobody expected that by noon, everything would change forever. The first sign came when every television broadcast, radio station, and digital screen went dark at exactly 12:00 p.m. Eastern Time. For 30 seconds, the world held its breath. Then the messages began. Massive holographic projections appeared in the skies above every major city on Earth. They showed a being that looked almost human, but not quite. Its skin was pale gray, its eyes too large, and its uniform adorned with symbols of authority that no human had ever seen before. People of Earth, the alien figure spoke in perfect English, its voice simultaneously broadcasting in every human language across the globe. I am High Commander Stone of the Galactic Imperial Fleet. Your planet now stands at a crossroads. In orbit, the Imperial ships revealed themselves by dropping their cloaking shields. Hundreds of massive vessels, each larger than the largest human aircraft carrier, formed a ring around Earth. Their dark metal hulls blocked out the stars, and their weapon ports glowed with barely contained energy. At the Pentagon, General Roberts stared at the satellite feeds with a grim expression. "How many?" he asked the young lieutenant manning the radar station. 317 ships, each one measuring at least 2 miles in length. The High Commander's message continued, his tone carrying the casual arrogance of someone who had done this many times before. "Your civilization has been monitored for decades. You have achieved enough technological advancement to be of use to the Empire, but not enough to pose any meaningful resistance." People in the streets stood frozen, looking up at the sky in terror. Parents held their children close. Military bases around the world went into high alert, even though everyone knew their weapons would be useless against ships of that size. "The terms are simple," Stone declared. "Earth will provide annual tributes to the Empire. These will include 10% of your global mineral production, 5% of your agricultural output, and 1 million human workers to serve in Imperial facilities." In the United Nations building, emergency meetings convened. Representatives from every nation gathered, their usual political differences forgotten in the face of this unprecedented threat. The Security Council sat in stunned silence as the demands continued. "You have 48 hours to submit your formal acceptance of these terms," Stone announced. "If you comply, your civilization will be permitted to continue under Imperial oversight. If you refuse—" He paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "Well, let's just say we have dealt with resistant planets before." To demonstrate his point, one of the smaller Imperial ships fired a single shot at the moon. The beam of energy carved a visible crater into the lunar surface, easily visible from Earth. The message was clear: resistance would be futile. "Your time begins now," Stone concluded. The holographic projections vanished, but the ships remained in orbit, a constant reminder of the threat looming over humanity. In Washington, D.C., the president convened an emergency meeting in the White House bunker. Military leaders, scientists, and intelligence officials gathered around a long table, their faces illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights. "Options?" the president asked, looking around the room. General Roberts cleared his throat. "Sir, conventional weapons would be like throwing rocks at a battleship. Our most powerful nuclear missiles wouldn't even scratch their shields, based on the readings we're getting." "So we surrender?" someone asked from the back of the room. The president's phone buzzed. He looked at the message and a subtle smile crossed his face. "Not quite. Get me a secure line to Professor Reed at the Mountain Complex. It's time to show our visitors what humanity's been keeping in reserve." As night fell across Earth, lights blazed in military bases and scientific facilities around the world. In underground bunkers and hidden laboratories, men and women worked frantically, preparing for what would come next. The Empire expected submission, but they would soon learn that humanity had a few surprises of its own. Above it all, the Imperial fleet maintained its silent vigil, waiting for the surrender that their experience told them was inevitable. They had no way of knowing that their routine conquest was about to become anything but routine. Deep within the Rocky Mountains, behind blast doors and security checkpoints, Professor Reed walked quickly through a brightly lit corridor. Her gray hair was tied back in a messy bun, and dark circles under her eyes showed she hadn't slept since the aliens arrived. "The anti-gravity systems are ready," a young scientist reported, struggling to keep up with her pace. "The containment fields are at full power." "Good," Reed nodded, pushing open the doors to the main laboratory. "Because we're about to show them to the world." The laboratory was massive, carved directly into the mountain. In its center stood something impossible, a crashed alien scout ship that had fallen to Earth 30 years ago. Around it, hundreds of scientists and engineers worked at various stations, studying screens filled with complex equations and diagrams. Above ground, the world's leaders had gathered for an emergency video conference. The American president sat at his desk, looking at dozens of faces on the screen before him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what I'm about to show you has been kept secret for 3 decades. Professor Reed, you have the floor." Reed's face appeared on the screens. Behind her, the crashed scout ship was clearly visible. Gasps of surprise and angry mutters filled the conference as world leaders realized what they were seeing. In 1994, this Imperial scout ship crashed in the Nevada desert. Reed explained. "Instead of announcing it to the world, several governments agreed to keep it secret. We knew the Empire would come eventually. We've spent 30 years preparing for this day." She walked over to a large metal container. "The Empire thinks we're primitive. They believe certain technologies are beyond us. They're wrong." She pressed a button, and the container's sides lowered, revealing a softly glowing sphere of swirling energy. "This," she said, "is contained antimatter. The Empire believes this technology is impossible for any civilization under 10,000 years old. We managed it in 30 years. The Chinese president leaned forward. "Are you saying we can fight them?" "Better." Reed smiled. "We can scare them away. The Empire abandoned antimatter weapons research centuries ago. Too dangerous, they said. Too unstable. But we've mastered it." Screens around her showed test footage. A tiny amount of antimatter destroying an entire mountain. The world leaders watched in stunned silence. "We have weapons platforms hidden throughout the solar system," Reed continued. "Automated factories on the dark side of the moon. Defense systems that even their sensors can't detect. We're not helpless. We're ready." The Russian president spoke up. "Why didn't you share this technology before?" "Because humans aren't ready for it either," Reed answered honestly. "But we're ready to defend ourselves. The question is, do we show them our teeth?" Back in orbit, High Commander Stone watched Earth's cities going dark as night spread across the planet. His second-in-command, Officer Gray, entered his chamber. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy readings from Earth's moon," Gray reported. "Nothing matches our database." Stone waved his hand dismissively. "Primitive nuclear weapons, no doubt. Their satellites show they've barely mastered basic atomic fission." "No, sir." Gray's voice trembled slightly. "The energy signature. It's similar to antimatter." Stone's large eyes widened. "Impossible. Check again." "We've checked 10 times. There's more. We've lost contact with 3 of our long-range probes near their outer planets, and our sensors can't penetrate some areas of their solar system. It's like there's something blocking us." Stone stood up slowly, walking to the viewport. The blue planet hung below them, seemingly peaceful. But now, looking more carefully, he noticed things his arrogance had made him miss before. Patterns in their satellite movements that seemed too precise. Energy fluctuations that shouldn't exist in a primitive civilization. "How?" he whispered. "How did they advance so quickly?" In the mountain complex, Professor Reed looked at the crashed scout ship one last time. 30 years ago, you taught us how to reach the stars," she said quietly. "Now we'll teach your people how to respect us." She picked up a secure phone. "Mr. President, We're ready to send our response. Admiral Walker stood in the Global Defense Command Center, surrounded by screens showing the Imperial fleet in orbit. His uniform was crisp, his posture straight, despite not having slept for 24 hours. The room buzzed with activity as military personnel from dozens of nations worked together, preparing for what would come next. All weapons platforms are in position, a technician reported. Antimatter containment field stable. Walker nodded, then looked at the main screen where the world's leaders waited in their emergency video conference. Ladies and gentlemen, are we in agreement? One by one, they gave their approval. Some looked nervous, others determined, but all understood what was at stake. The Chinese president spoke for everyone. We either stand together now or fall forever. Very well. Walker squared his shoulders. Open a channel to the Imperial fleet. In orbit, High Commander Stone was studying the latest sensor readings when the communication request came through. He smiled, expecting Earth's surrender. Instead, his screen filled with the image of a human in a military uniform. This is Admiral James Walker of Earth's United Defense Council, the human said, his voice steady and clear. We have received your demands. Stone leaned forward. Then you're ready to submit. No, Walker's reply was simple but firm. Instead, we have a demand of our own. You have 24 hours to remove your fleet from our solar system. Stone stared at the screen for a moment, then burst out laughing. Several of his bridge officers joined in. Perhaps I wasn't clear about our capabilities, he said. One of our smallest ships could destroy your largest cities in seconds. We understand your capabilities perfectly, Walker replied. Just as we understand that your sensors have detected anomalies you can't explain. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Blind spots in your scans. The laughter on the Imperial bridge died quickly. Stone's expression hardened. Walker continued, We've spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Your scout ship taught us well. What scout ship? Stone demanded, but his voice wavered slightly. Instead of answering, Walker pressed a button. On every screen in the Imperial fleet, a video began playing. It showed a small amount of antimatter destroying a mountain in a controlled test. Then it showed the automated factories on the moon. Finally, it displayed the weapons platforms hidden throughout the solar system, each aimed at the Imperial fleet. Impossible, Stone whispered. Your civilization is too young. You're not the first to underestimate humanity, Walker said. We adapt, we learn, and when threatened, we fight back. In the command center, Professor Reed walked up beside Walker. Your empire abandoned antimatter weapons research because you thought it was too dangerous, she said. We mastered it because we had to. Now, which one of us is truly primitive? Stone's face showed a mix of emotions. Disbelief, anger, and something new to him. Fear. You're bluffing, he said, but he didn't sound convinced. 24 hours, Walker repeated. Leave our solar system, or we'll demonstrate just how serious we are. And Commander. He leaned closer to the screen. Spread the word through your empire. Earth is not a planet of servants. We are not here to pay tribute. We are here to take our place among the stars. As equals, or not at all. The transmission cut off, leaving the Imperial bridge in stunned silence. Officer Gray approached Stone's chair. Sir, your orders? Stone stared at the blue planet below. For the first time in his long career of conquering worlds, he felt uncertain. Verify their claims, he ordered. Every ship, every sensor. I want to know if they're bluffing. Back on Earth, Walker looked at the assembled leaders on his screen. And now we wait. What if they attack? Someone asked. Then we show them exactly what humanity can do when pushed too far, Walker replied. But I don't think it will come to that. They're used to easy conquests. The moment they realize we can hurt them back, they'll reconsider. Above Earth, the Imperial fleet remained in position, but there was a new tension in the air. For the first time in their history of conquest, they faced a choice: retreat or risk everything against an enemy they had fatally underestimated. 12 hours had passed since Earth's ultimatum. In the Global Defense Command Center, Admiral Walker watched the Imperial fleet closely. They hadn't moved, but their ships kept scanning Earth with increasing desperation, trying to confirm humanity's claims. "They still think we're bluffing," Professor Reed said, standing beside him. She held a tablet showing live data from their hidden weapons platforms. "We need to show them." Walker nodded slowly. "Is the test ready?" "Yes. Europa has been evacuated of all research stations. The Antimatter missile is in position." The Admiral pressed a button on his console, opening a channel to the Imperial fleet. High Commander Stone's face appeared on screen, looking tired and angry. 12 hours have passed," Walker said calmly. "You don't seem to be preparing to leave." Stone tried to appear confident, but his eye twitched slightly. "We've detected your energy signatures, yes, but they could be faked. We require proof." "Very well." Walker looked at Reed, who nodded. "All Imperial ships, please direct your attention to Europa, the sixth moon of Jupiter. We will demonstrate our capabilities." In orbit around Jupiter, a hidden weapons platform activated. A small missile, barely visible against the darkness of space, launched silently toward Europa. The Imperial fleet's sensors tracked its movement. A single missile. Stone laughed. "Against a moon." Walker didn't respond. He just watched the countdown on his screen. The missile struck Europa's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the impact point. The antimatter reaction spread quickly, creating a massive explosion that split the icy moon into two uneven pieces. The larger chunk spun away slowly, while the smaller piece broke apart into thousands of fragments. Complete silence fell over the Imperial bridge. Stone stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. Officer Gray's hands shook as he read the report. "Sir, that was definitely antimatter. More stable than anything our scientists ever achieved." "That," Walker said into the silence, "was one missile. One small missile, carrying a tiny amount of antimatter. We have thousands more, each one 100 times more powerful. Would you like to see what they can do to a ship?" Stone's face had turned pale gray. You would destroy your own solar system just to resist us." Professor Reed stepped forward. "We would destroy anything to remain free. That's something your empire doesn't understand about humans. We don't submit. We don't surrender. Push us into a corner, and we'll fight back with everything we have." On screens across Earth, people watched as the pieces of Europa drifted apart. It was a terrible sight, but it sent a clear message. Humanity was no longer a primitive species to be conquered. "Your weapons," Stone said carefully, "they're pointed at our ships." "Some of them," Walker replied. "Others are aimed at key points in your empire." "Yes, we know where they are. That scout ship you lost had excellent star charts." Stone's eyes widened. "You wouldn't dare attack the empire itself. Try us." Walker's voice was steel. 12 more hours, Commander, then we'll demonstrate again, this time with an Imperial target." In the mountain complex, teams of scientists monitored the antimatter platforms. One young technician looked up at Professor Reed. Was it really necessary, destroying Europa? Reed watched the moon's fragments scattered across space. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "you have to destroy something to save everything else." They needed to understand we're serious. Back in orbit, Stone called an emergency meeting of his fleet commanders. The mood was grim as they reviewed the sensor data again and again. "It's not just the weapons," one commander said. "It's what this means. They mastered in 30 years what took us thousands. If we leave them alone for another 30. Stone looked down at Earth, seeing it with new eyes. Not as a prize to be taken, but as something far more dangerous. A young civilization that had learned to run before others had learned to walk. The choice was becoming clear. The only question was, Would the Empire's pride let them make it? High Commander Stone sat in his private chambers aboard the Imperial flagship, watching recordings of Europa's destruction for the 100th time. The sight of the moon splitting apart still made his stomach turn, not just because of the destruction, but because of what it meant for the Empire. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Enter. Officer Gray walked in, followed by 5 other fleet commanders. Their faces showed the strain of the past day's events. The latest reports, sir, Gray said, placing a tablet on Stone's desk. Our deep space sensors have confirmed it. Earth has weapons platforms beyond their asteroid belt. Some are pointed at our core worlds. Commander Black, the oldest of the group, stepped forward. We should strike now. Full assault, before they can react. Our ship's cold. Could what? Stone interrupted. Did you see what they did to Europa? One small missile. Just one. He stood up and walked to the viewport, watching Earth rotate slowly below them. And we have no idea how many they really have. In another part of the flagship, junior officers gathered in their break room, speaking in hushed voices. I heard they learned everything from our lost scout ship. One whispered. 30 years. They did in 30 years what took us 3,000. My scanner picked up something else, another added. Their lunar bases, they're building more ships. Not like ours. Different designs. Maybe better ones. The door slid open, and everyone quickly returned to their stations. But the whispers continued throughout the ship. Fear was spreading through the fleet. Back in Stone's chambers, the debate continued. The Empire has never retreated, Commander Red argued. Never. If we leave, other worlds will question our power. There will be rebellions. If we stay, and they destroy half our fleet, Stone countered, there will be rebellions anyway. Officer Gray brought up a new hologram, showing Earth's industrial centers. There's something else, sir. Their production rates, their adaptation speed, it's unprecedented. Even if we won a conflict today. They'd rebuild, Stone finished the thought. And next time, they'd be stronger. On Earth's moon, hidden Imperial spy drones watched the human facilities with growing concern. New factories were appearing at impossible speeds. Automated systems built more automated systems. Resources were being mined and processed with remarkable efficiency. In the flagship's strategy room, Stone gathered his full command staff. The room was packed with the Empire's finest military minds, all facing the same incredible problem. 3 options, Stone said, pointing to the tactical display. 1. Full attack. Risk massive losses, possibly including core worlds if their weapons reach that far. 2. Full retreat. Loss of face. Possible rebellions in other systems. 3. He paused. 3. Commander Black asked. 3. We adapt. Like they did. Stone brought up an image of Earth. They've proven themselves more advanced than we thought. Perhaps it's time for a different approach. Officer Gray nodded slowly. Diplomatic relations. Trading technology. Better to have them as allies than enemies, Stone said, especially given how quickly they advance. The room erupted in argument. Some officers pounded the table, saying it would shame the Empire. Others nodded thoughtfully, seeing the wisdom in Stone's words. A young tactical officer raised her hand. Sir, our long-range scans just detected something new. They're building something near their star. The room fell silent as the image appeared on screen. Stone's eyes widened. Is that? A Dyson ring, sir. Early stages, but they're already planning to harness their sun's power. Stone sank into his chair. In just 30 years, humans had gone from a primitive civilization to one that could threaten the Empire's ships. What would they achieve in another 30? He looked at the countdown timer. 10 hours remained until Earth's deadline. 10 hours to make a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Contact Earth, he said finally. I have a proposal for them. As his officers rushed to obey, Stone watched the blue planet once more. The Empire had come expecting to find servants. Instead, They had found equals, or perhaps something more. The only question was, could the Empire's pride accept this new reality? The Global Defense Command Center was buzzing with activity as Admiral Walker and Professor Reed prepared for their final communication with the Imperial fleet. Screens around them showed the weapons platforms, all ready and waiting. "They've requested to speak with us," a communications officer announced. "High Commander Stone says he has a proposal." Walker straightened his uniform. "Put him through." Stone's face appeared on the main screen, looking different from his first appearance. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "Earth," Stone began, "we have reviewed your capabilities. Your advancement is impressive. Perhaps we can reach an arrangement that benefits both sides." Walker's expression remained neutral. "We're listening. Instead of tribute, we propose a trade agreement. Your antimatter technology for our faster-than-light travel systems. Equal exchange." Professor Reed stepped forward. "Commander Stone, check your long-range scans of Mercury." Stone pressed some buttons, and his eyes widened. On the screen behind him, his officers gasped. Near Mercury's orbit, a massive human station was testing what was clearly a prototype FTL drive. "How?" Stone whispered. "Your scout ship," Reed explained. "Very educational. We've already reverse-engineered most of your basic technologies. But that's not all." She nodded to a technician, who sent another set of data to the Imperial fleet. The data showed Earth's hidden achievements: quantum computers more advanced than Imperial models, energy shields that could withstand antimatter explosions, and weapons that could tear holes in space itself. "We don't need a trade agreement," Walker said calmly. "What we need is a guarantee. Earth and the entire solar system will remain free, permanently." In underground bunkers across Earth, more secret projects activated. Satellite cameras showed massive structures rising from beneath the oceans, defense platforms emerging from mountain ranges, and shipyards uncloaking themselves in Earth's orbit. Stone watched in growing amazement as humanity revealed its full strength. All of this, in 30 years. Humanity faced extinction, Reed explained. "We had two choices, submit or surpass. We chose to surpass. Your scout ship showed us what was possible, and we did the rest ourselves." Walker pulled up a star chart. "These are your Empire's key military installations. We have weapons locked on each one. Not as a threat, but as insurance. If you leave us in peace, we'll do the same for you." On the Imperial flagship, Officer Gray handed Stone a report. "Sir, their technological growth rate is beyond anything we've seen. At their current pace, they'll surpass us completely within a decade." Stone finished, reading the data. Walker continued, "We're not interested in conquest. Earth wants to join the galactic community, but as equals, not subjects. We'll trade fairly, share non-military advances, and respect boundaries. But we will never, ever submit to rule by others." The command center fell silent as everyone waited for Stone's response. The next few moments would determine whether the solar system would see peace or war. Stone looked at his officers, then back at the humans. "You understand that no species has ever dictated terms to the Empire before." "Then perhaps," Reed said softly, "it's time for the Empire to evolve, just as we did." Walker raised his hand, and all of Earth's weapons platforms lit up at once, becoming visible to Imperial sensors. Thousands of antimatter missiles locked onto targets throughout the Imperial fleet and beyond. "Your answer, Commander?" Walker asked. "Peace between equals, or—" He let the alternative hang in the air. Stone looked at the weapons aimed at his fleet, at the rapid advancement of human technology, at the determination in the humans' eyes. The Empire had ruled through fear for millennia. But for the first time, they were the ones who felt fear. "I must contact the Imperial Council," Stone said finally. "But I believe they will see the wisdom in your proposal." Walker nodded. "You have 1 hour to begin your withdrawal. After that, we demonstrate our resolve again. And this time, It won't be on an uninhabited moon. As the transmission ended, humans around the world watched their screens, waiting to see if their bold gamble would lead to peace or to a war that would reshape the galaxy forever. The hour passed like centuries. In the Global Defense Command Center, every eye watched the Imperial fleet, waiting for their decision. Admiral Walker stood calmly, though his coffee cup had long gone cold in his hand. Movement in the fleet, a sensor operator announced. Everyone held their breath. Slowly, majestically, the Imperial ships began to move. Not toward Earth, but away. One by one, they turned their massive hulls and started their withdrawal from Earth's solar system. High Commander Stone's face appeared on the main screen one last time. He looked tired but resolute. The Imperial Council has agreed to your terms. They were impressed by humanity's achievements. A wise decision, Walker replied. And the treaty? Being drafted now, Earth will be recognized as a sovereign system and an equal power in galactic affairs. Stone paused, then added something unexpected. I must ask, how did you do it? Such advancement in so little time. Professor Reed stepped forward. We had motivation you couldn't understand. Every human child grows up hearing stories about standing up to bullies, about fighting impossible odds, about never giving up. She smiled slightly. Your empire rules through fear. We grew strong through hope. Across Earth, people poured into the streets as the news spread. The massive Imperial ships, once terrifying, now looked like retreating shadows against the sky. Cheers erupted in every city as each vessel disappeared into faster-than-light travel. In New York, London, Beijing, and every other major city, massive screens showed the Imperial fleet's departure. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders to watch history being made. This wasn't just a victory, it was the dawn of a new era. Back in the command center, Officer Gray sent one final transmission from the Imperial flagship. Our analysts predict that at your current rate of advancement, you'll surpass our technology within 10 years. 9. Reed corrected with a small smile. We're ahead of schedule. As the last Imperial ship prepared to leave, Stone made his final statement. The galaxy will be watching Earth closely now. You've changed everything. That was the point, Walker replied. Tell your empire this. Humanity comes in peace, but will never come in chains. The transmission ended. The last ship vanished into FTL. Earth's solar system was truly its own again. In the following days, changes came quickly. The hidden facilities revealed themselves fully. Massive space stations emerged from their cloaking fields. Shipyards began constructing vessels not for war, but for exploration. 1 week after the Empire's departure, the world's leaders gathered in person at the United Nations. The mood was different now. No longer were they separate nations facing an alien threat. They were Earth, united, ready to take its place among the stars. Professor Reed presented the next phase of human advancement. We've already begun constructing diplomatic stations near major trade routes. Our ships can reach nearby stars within days. We're ready to join the galactic community. Admiral Walker added, and thanks to the Empire's databases from their scout ship, we know exactly how to navigate galactic politics. He smiled. Sometimes the best defense is simply being too much trouble to attack. In orbit, the first of Earth's new starships prepared for its maiden voyage. It wasn't a warship, but a vessel of exploration and diplomacy. Yet hidden within its elegant design were innovations that would make any future invader think twice. As the sun set on this new era, Professor Reed stood at a window in the mountain complex, looking at the stars. The young technician who had questioned the Europa demonstration stood beside her. "Do you think they'll really leave us alone?" he asked. "They'll do more than that," Reed replied. "They'll learn from us, just as we learned from them." The galaxy needed a reminder that strength doesn't come from age or size, but from determination and innovation. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden achievements now stood proudly revealed. They were no longer just defenses. They were stepping stones to humanity's future among the stars. The Empire had come expecting to find servants, and instead had helped create equals. The stars no longer seemed like distant lights, but destinations waiting to be reached. Humanity had passed its first galactic test, not through submission, but by showing that the youngest species could also be the most formidable. Earth was ready for its next great adventure.